If you've not heard our episode looking at the Olympics ban on trans women, the English FA's clash with Reform UK, and what happens when media are banned, then you've missed our most recent episode because we've got a little bit extra now. Hello, welcome again to Sport Unlocked. We've got a bit more for you this week, and we've always got a bit more extra in video form on our YouTube and TikTok pages at Sport Unlocked on all of those to listen and see Martyn Ziegler from the Times, Tariq Panja from the New York Times, and myself, Rob Harris from Sky News. Now, we're in the midst of the international break. We've seen Senegal parading the African Cup of Nations trophy, despite it being stripped from them, handed to Morocco after that controversial AFCON decision. But never far away from domestic matters. In fact, that Senegal trophy presentation happened in Paris, and things have been quite tense in France during this international break, particularly focused on Paris Saint-Germain and, never far from the spotlight, their leader.
Nasser Al-Khelaifi, the Paris Saint-Germain president, is a really, really interesting story in France. So, PSG, champions of France, who are every season pretty much, but this year they're in a title race against Lens, the team from north of France. They've got the 10th highest budget in the French league, which is not one of the big budget leagues, 1 point behind. And they were supposed to play, I think, after the international break. But PSG have requested for that game to be postponed so they can have a good rest before they play Liverpool in the Champions League quarter-finals. Lens, well, like, hang on a minute. What's that got to do with us? We're in a title race. We want to play the game. And the French league eventually sided with PSG. They get their break. Lens, the team in the title race, are furious about this. But Nasser Al-Khelaifi is one of the men on the board of the French league, a very powerful figure, president of the EFC, the European Football Club, formerly ECA, on the UEFA board, etc., be in sport. This is a super interesting thing because the French league struggles for any attention. If you've got a title race, surely as a league, you want that tension and you want that audience to stay with you. But they've basically said, look, we want French teams to do well in Europe, coefficient issues, so this game is going to be postponed. Well, Liverpool and the English teams, they don't have these situations. They just play the league. And I'm really surprised by this, considering where the French league is.
This seems like something maybe UEFA will have to act on to ensure a level playing field, that if clubs are scheduled to have a league match the weekend before a European fixture, that you can't just cancel it to assist one team, unless there really is an issue with a lack of rest between matches.
The explanation from the French league was that I think the decisions are in line with the board of directors' clear strategic aim of enabling France to retain its 5th place in the UEFA coefficient rankings, which secures 4 places in the Champions League. So their argument is, if PSG can progress, that helps all the other clubs and keeps France amongst the top.
But ruins the title race.
It does. Well, it feels like they're being sort of relegated. The French league has been relegated in terms of importance, doesn't it? Which I guess doesn't sit well with most of the other clubs.
Well, those inter-league rivalries and issues with the PSG dominance has certainly created tension over the years. John Textor has had his own rift with Nasser Al-Khelaifi over various issues, but Textor's not in a good place, is he, financially?
No. Now, we've been talking about this guy for a number of months. This is John Textor, the American owner of Eagle Football Group, one of the big MCOs, multi-club ownership groups. Is run into financial trouble. We've already said he's been kicked off the Lyon ruling group. He's still like the majority shareholder, but he's not allowed to run Lyon. He had to sell Crystal Palace last season because of all the drama about the Europa League. Now this time he's in danger of losing his entire business. So the holding company of the company that runs his multi-club group, which also includes Botafogo in Brazil and RWC Brussels, a team in Belgium, as well as Lyon. They are in administration because he has apparently been unable to pay his debts to Ares, this American investment group that's lent hundreds of millions of euros to him for all of this. Wow.
Well, the teams aren't in administration, are they? Which is something for the fans of those clubs. But all the same, you'd guess that it's a pretty worrying situation.
Yeah, it would be. Like, who, if you are those teams, you would have been unsettled for a very long time. Big questions about MCO with these guys. We've talked about 777 partners in the past, another MCO group, bunch of teams unraveled when they try to take control of Everton in the Premier League, and now Josh Wander, the kind of face of that group, he's been indicted on fraud charges and faces years in prison in the United States in relation to that. He denies those allegations. Yeah, I don't know what this says about MCO, and I don't know what it says about the people who run football who've kind of allowed all of this to happen.
I think the issue with, from what I've seen with the Eagle Holdings and John Textor, it just seems like he's sort of shifting money around from one club to another. So, a crisis appears there, sell a, do a sort of related party transaction with a player sale there, do that. And it's all a bit messy. And it looks like things are building up in a very concerning way.
Let's look at some of the other stories we've been reporting on this week, and going back to the fallout from Chelsea escaping with just fine over the years of illicit payments in the Roman Abramovich era. And what about the chairman of the club at the time, Bruce Buck? And Martyn, you've been looking into a bit more around his role and his influence in the Premier League.
Yeah, so he was the chairman of the remuneration committee, which decided on the size of the bonuses and the pay, actually, for people. Executive chairman Richard Schoonemore, and the kind of £5 million golden farewell. That was his idea. And then I guess he would have also done the same for the current chief executive, Richard Masters, up until 2021. But interestingly, the Premier League say now they have, since a governance review took place, no longer will any club figure be allowed to chair that committee because there's a concern. It's a governance issue, isn't it? It's a conflict of interest. So if you have one of the 20 clubs in this position of power, it's a bit of a concern. So it does ask the question, though, why, was it, how was it allowed that this person could have all that influence?
And we've not heard from him, though, yet, have we? Not since the Premier League verdict came out. Not about any of these questions around, while he's not being accused of wrongdoing himself, not being named in that Premier League report.
No, and I just want to say, does it really take a governance review to say that's not good governance, to have the chairman of Chelsea on top of a remuneration committee for the chief executive? Remember, like, quite a lot of these things happened under Richard Scudemore's period. That's another person who we have not heard from in this period. A guy who's been lauded for building the Premier League into this colossus and everything else. Like, quite a lot of these questions, nothing was kind of really clear about how things were going. It was very, very, very light touch regulation. Some people say that allows the Premier League to be what it is, but also, I dare say maybe it does. A closer scrutiny might have stopped some of this stuff from happening. The other Chelsea official I was looking at is Marina Granovskaya, the director of Chelsea. She left the club with £35 million from the sale. Not bad work if you can get it. And the FA investigation is taking place still, and we're waiting for the results of that. What I've heard is that if Marina Granovskaya decides to come back into football, she could face investigation for her role in any of this, or any role. Asked her for comment. So far, no comment. Like, we understand that she has been considering returning as a football agent.
All these figures completely quiet as the questions continue about how Chelsea got off lightly. Now, as we end recording, still the impact of the US-Israel war on Iran is being felt. Still questions over Iran's participation. The latest word from the sports ministry in Tehran is the fact that they don't want any Iranian teams to be playing on hostile territory. That impacts the Asian Champions League and playing in Saudi. Still got the issue of the World Cup coming up, the Iran's group games taking place in the United States. Maybe things will become clearer once qualifying is complete next week. But we're going to be assessing what are the long-term implications of the war, and that will perhaps not become clearer for some time about sport, but more immediately where the money goes, and would all the sponsorship money still be there?
Yeah, look, this is the Gulf region has been propping up a lot of sports. Football seen a lot of money, but across the spectrum, Saudi money, Qatari money, Emirati money has been funneled into sports at a massive scale. No part of the world gives as much, really, in terms of attention and focus and lavish money. Call it beIN Sports, Emirates Airlines, Qatar Airways, PIF. Now, all these countries are spending huge amounts in this war. They're losing huge amounts as well, with the Straits of Hormuz being blocked and everything that comes from that. What is the long tail of this?
Well, we might focus a lot on football, but there's a lot of money coming in, but maybe the impact of sponsorship or the loss of it would be felt even more in those sports without the same riches, like rugby.
New Nations Championship, brand new international rugby tournament, starts in July and involves the top 12 teams in the world. Now, for the last 15 months, it's basically been assumed that Qatar Airways is going to be the title sponsor for this, and in 2028 they're going to Doha will host the final. Nothing's been signed, and suddenly this has all erupted in the Gulf. And the organisers of this Nation Championships, the heads of the unions, of the rugby unions from these, are really, really concerned now. They've tried to get in contact with Qatar Airways, find out what's happening. Can they sign a deal? It's only, as I say, it's the start of July. It's not that far away, and they've been unable to get any clear answers about whether this is actually going to take place. And so, if it doesn't, we're talking about £20 million per tournament, and for rugby, that's a huge amount of money.
Yeah, very significant sum there. But also the human toll of all of this is so significant. You have the Iranian national football team playing a friendly game against Nigeria, and they started that game wearing black armbands, and before the match they were holding school bags during the national anthem as a protest against this strike on the primary school that happened in the first days of the war. 168 people were killed, 110 children, Iranian officials said. This was the Shajara Tayyabeh school. The US is saying it has been investigating this. The human rights chief has asked them to hurry up. And again, this is on the football field, so that's why it's in our sphere. So we're talking about this. And Rob mentioned, are Iran going to be at the World Cup? When you see images of them holding the bags of these school kids, that's going to be, it's going to be very hard to see this team in the United States.
And we don't know how much of a choice that was of the team from the political leadership as well, how much it was imposed on them to do that, whether or not it would breach FIFA rules, the political messaging. Well, it's not too far removed from UEFA's own messaging at the Super Cup, which was stop killing children, stop killing civilians, because effectively that's a continuation of it. They don't want school children to be killed.
Yeah, it looks very similar. It's exactly a very good point. And where's the line then? Who decides? UEFA probably have quite a lot of power, given they are the governing body for their competition.
Well, things should become a bit clearer about the World Cup this week, because qualifying 2026 finally coming to an end. And we've come to an end of this shorter extra episode of Sport Unlocked, ensuring the previous one wasn't so long, so giving some of that additional content in this slightly curtailed format, but lots got through. And you can send us your thoughts, and you can reply to our videos on TikTok, Insta, and YouTube. Lots of people doing so at Sport Unlocked on all those platforms. But for now, thank you for listening. Goodbye.